Health inspectors of Reddit, what's the worst violation you've ever seen? I had a health inspector tell me the story. There was a family in which both the elderly mother and a handicapped sibling used wheelchairs. Another sibling lived in the house with them and did all the driving, etc. The health department got a phone call from the local wheelchair company. The brother stopped by and picked up a new, custom-built wheelchair for his sister and for his mother, and returned within about 30 minutes, saying that the sister's wheelchair hadn't been made to the right specifications. It was too small. After he left, the staff noticed several roaches on the chair, so the guy I met got a call. Apparently, it was summer, Midwest, both hot and humid, and the house was all locked up, with no open windows for ventilation, curtains drawn, etc. The inspector entered the house and he said it was so stifling hot that he started to get dizzy, and, he thought, hallucinate. He said that there was a sound like leaves rustling in the fall, and the walls and floors were kind of vibrating. He then realized it was because they were literally covered in roaches. He immediately evacuated the 3 people living there, and the next day, they tented and sprayed the house. He went in a Tyvek suit and knee-high rubber boots, and said that the dead roaches were about 2.5 feet deep in most parts of the house. It's moments like these that make me think that people just straight up sometimes open portal to hack in their homes, or something. When I went to culinary school, one of professors made the statement, if you want to know how clean a restaurant's kitchen is, go to bathroom first before you are seated. If the bathroom is dirty, there is a good chance the kitchen is in the same condition. This is what I check when I enter dives. It's a heck of a lot harder to clean a kitchen than a restroom. If you can't do that, you can be dang sure they don't give a frick about the difficult stuff. Not a health inspector, but my mom used to work at this restaurant where the owner just did not give a crap. It was a Mexican restaurant, and my mom told me that once a lady came in asking for caldo de res, beef soup, but they didn't have any more meat, at least not the one used for that dish. They were about to let the lady know when the owner stepped up and told the lady that her food would be right out. The server and my mom were both confused as to what she was going to do. Well, this lady goes and literally digs through the freaking trash and pulls out some beef, some still with bone. She then ran it through water, cooked it and served it to that poor lady. My mom says the lady was even sucking the bone and she almost felt sick watching. My mom quit that job soon after. Asked my mom again about it, and here is what she said. The bone meat was not raw. It was left over from people who had ordered the same thing. They had almost ran out of that soup. All the meat was gone, so they thought they would not serve anymore. The owner grabbed the bone meat from the trash, rinsed it and threw it back in what was left of the soup, heated up for a bit and served it. Just thought I needed to clarify this. Some years ago, the health inspectors in my city found that a number of the Asian food type restaurants in one of the food courts were taking the meat that some customers left on their plates, rinsing it and reusing it. Unfortunately, we just have to take on trust what happens behind the kitchen door in restaurants. Not health inspector, but I worked as an assistant cook at a restaurant. 2 weeks into the job, I opened a cupboard to get a can of tomato sauce and I see a huge butt tarantula scuttling away behind the cans. I told the boss what I had seen, so that maybe we should get someone to deal with the huge butt spider living in the kitchen. Boss turns to me and say, I see you've met Eduardo. Just don't put your hand too close to him and you'll be good. Later, another cook proceeded to explain to me the spider been living there for 2 years and they allowed it because he kept rodents and roaches away. This is a true story. So know this, Reddit. Every time that you think about swatting a spider, remember that there is a possibility that a friendly spider is guarding your favorite restaurant's food against nasty critters. I love that they named the tarantula Eduardo. Seems like a real bro. Not a health inspector, but witnessed some things at my first job as setup waitress at a banquet hall. The head cook had some hairy arms and he always mixed the salad with his hands, so you know that hair is getting in here. And one day we found a used band-aid in the salad. I survived the assassination attempt. I like how it just cuts it in the, like, no, that's it, the memory's too much. Not a health inspector, but I used to manage a well-known sandwich shop. One day, I discovered a huge colony of black stachybotrys mold growing behind one of the walls. I mentioned it to my assistant manager, who told me that everyone knew it was there, and that the entire staff assumed that I also knew about it and was just keeping my mouth shut. I reported it to the district manager and the owner that day. They both told me that they knew for a fact that black mold was harmless and that they weren't going to pay $3,000 to tear out the drywall and replace it. I was fired inside of a week. I reported them to the local health department, but by the time the health department got around to doing the inspection, they had already fixed the wall. What a load of absolute horse crap. I'm sorry you got fired, man. Taking 10 years as an inspector. Most dangerous is usually not the most disgusting. I've seen entire walk-in coolers they were using at 55-60 degrees Fahrenheit and the staff didn't even notice anything wrong. I've seen piles of mice that died getting stuck in the grease behind the fryer. I've seen staff throwing raw burgers within the grill then making a salad right after. I've seen squirrels and birds roaming freely inside a bread manufacturer. The stereotypes are true. Chinese restaurant kitchens are almost always filthy. Most common critical violation: dish machine not sanitizing properly. Mom worked for a hospital. Case after case of food poisoning came in, with one thing in common. A local restaurant had a lobster dinner special. Health inspectors went in and found that they were dumping the half-used clarified butter back in the pot in the serving area as they cleared the tables. I hope people understand that people in restaurants do touch your food. There's nothing that you eat in a restaurant that hasn't been directly touched by somebody in the kitchen. Some of you may be thinking, well, why don't they all just wear latex gloves? Actually, there's a couple reasons. They break far too easily among others that make it impractical, but most importantly, if you only wear gloves then whatever it is that you think is on their hands is now just on their latex gloves. Compulsive hand washing, hair nets, and keeping the place properly cleaned is as much as anybody can reasonably expect. Incidentally, Applebee's has to be the cleanest place I ever worked at. If you were standing around they'd hand you a toothbrush and tell you scrub the grout between the tiles. Every day was a good 2 hours of cleaning after the place closed. That's with a good head start. It's harder to make big messes when you're just microwaving stuff. Kind of the opposite, but my partner's home daycare was inspected once, routine check. No big deal. A day later the fire marshal returned and informed her that out of all the daycares he had visited the previous day, our house was the only one he'd send his kids to. The fact that he felt compelled to drive out of his way just to come tell that boggles my mind. Well, I don't know if you should be proud of yourselves or upset at everyone else. Not a health inspector, but my mom told me this story some time ago. When she was in her early 20s, she had started working as a waitress for the restaurant in this big fancy hotel. Just a few days after she started working there, the hotel was hosting some big event, so there were a ton of super rich people staying there, and thus the restaurant was super busy. So my mom goes into the kitchen at one point and sees that one of the chefs is clearly sick. He's coughing and hacking, and continually wiping his runny nose on a handkerchief, right as he's making food. So my mom goes to her boss and is like, hey, this chef is sick. He can't be working right now. He's gonna make everyone sick. Her boss tells her that the guy said he was fine and to not worry about it. So my mom goes to the sick guy and tells him that he has to leave to prevent the food from being contaminated. He tells her that he tried to call in sick, but the boss told him that they were going to be too busy and they needed him, and if he didn't show up for work, he'd be fired. So my mom goes back to the boss and he admits that yeah, he knew the guy was really sick, but he didn't care if everyone else got sick as long as they got through the event. My mom tells her boss that this is wrong, and that he needs to send the guy home, take back everyone's food, refund their money, throw out all the food that may have been contaminated, close the place down and clean it up. He simply laughs at her and tells her she's fired. So she went and did the logical thing. She walked out into the dining room, stood on top of a table and shouted to everyone at the event that the boss forced a sick man to work today and all of their food was probably contaminated. There was practically a riot. Everyone crowded around and screamed at the boss, demanding their money back. In the end, the restaurant was temporarily closed. Everyone got their money back. The boss of the restaurant was fired by the owner of the hotel and mom got to keep her job. Your mom is the real MVP. Environmental health inspectors don't only cover restaurants. I inspect wells and septic systems. I see sewage every day. The worst thing I've seen are old men coming up to their door naked, and what makes it worse is that they knew what date and time I was stopping by. I worked in hotels early in my life. There's some subset of dirty old men who always let housekeeping walk in on them naked and smiling. I really wanted to get the obviously gay desk clerk into a housekeeping uniform and have him walk in on one of these guys once, but we decided the risks weren't worth it. I had to take a sanitation class for culinary school. One day the health inspector came in and gave us a presentation. He looked up all the citations in town, and my personal favorite was improper use of a hand sink for the local strip club. Go on. Not a health inspector, but I was visiting a friend in Colorado and his roommate came home from a taco place in Denver. He unwrapped a napkin to show us a tooth that was in his taco. The guy still ate all of his tacos even after nearly swallowing a tooth. We tried to tell him he should have made a complaint, but he was so nonchalant about it. Bleh. Not a health inspector, but worked in a restaurant where the managers were good friends with one. The coffee ice cream shop next door was shut down out of nowhere and we were all shocked because they were pretty busy. Health inspector came in one day and manager asked why it was shut down. Health inspector proceeded to tell my manager that he walked in unannounced early one morning before the shop opened, only to find the owner jerking off behind the counter by the ice cream. At least you know he was passionate about ice cream. My CNA instructor once witnessed a McDonald's employee, probably 16 or 17 years old, use a rag in the bathroom to clean the sink and anywhere else that needed wiping down. She later witnessed the employee use the same rag to wipe down the counters in front of the cash registers. He was fired on the spot. Not a health inspector but assistant manager at a restaurant for a year between university. I once saw my sous chef flick a fillet steak out of the pan, kick it back up with his foot and land it back in the pan to continue cooking. He did this 4 times. I was watching on the CCTV trying not to laugh every time he celebrated each catch. I saw one of the guys at my local pizza place, open air deal to the kitchen, accidentally toss a whole 18-inch pie halfway across the kitchen, landed squarely on the salad prep bench, where it was supposed to be going next for some greens. Cheers erupted. Health inspectors, do you ever fear being attacked by someone when you are writing up a bad report, particularly a really bad one that would shut them down? You are essentially destroying their livelihood and I am sure some would take it a little far. I'm well aware that the problems a restaurant has is the owner's fault and it's not the big bad health inspector. I suppose I was trying to put myself in the owner's shoes. As an irrational owner, I'd likely see it as an attack on my livelihood. Reminds me of a SpongeBob episode where they tried to fricking kill the health inspector. I've been a chef for 17 years and haven't ever seen anything overly gross at a restaurant I've worked at. I've mostly done fine dining and high-end chains though. Although traveling to other countries is a different matter. You may resume eating. I am very aware of what the term chef actually means. That being said, I'm a chef at a rather large restaurant and I have 60 cooks working for me who refer to me as chef without me asking them to. I've worked in a few kitchens and have to say that Chipotle is without a doubt the cleanest place I've ever worked at bar none. I'm not a health inspector, but I've been waiting tables since I turned 16. Some of the things I've witnessed have really turned me off to going out to eat. The worst thing I can think of right now is when I saw the manager blow his nose into the salad dressing and mix it up. I wish I was lying. Didn't realize salad dressing was so absorbent. I used to work next to a Chinese place that tenderized 20-pound roasts by repeatedly slamming it on the floor. The pizzeria I was working at the time was so dirty, the wife changed the baby inside your pizza box. At another pizzeria I worked at I was washing dishes and the manager came to me with a block of Swiss cheese. It was covered in mold and he wanted me to scrub it out of the holes. Not a health inspector, but there's one story in Vegas my mom told me about. There's this one bar brilliantly named The Bar and it has been shut down multiple times. One time it was shut down for being infested with roaches and trying to hide it. One time it was shut down for simply never cleaning anything and having horrible hygiene overall. And more than once it's been shut down for the bartenders doing weird stuff with the drinks. She never elaborated on that part, but from the tone of voice it sounded physical. Then again, none of this is exactly too awful, right? Thing is, that isn't the crazy part. The crazy part is that it keeps freaking reopening because of popular demand. This place has had huge crowds for years even though it sucks, and whenever it shuts down everyone throws a huge frickin' 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 huge. Pretty sure that place is still open here. I'll just stick to Good Springs for my bars. Not me, my cousin. She was a health inspector for the city of Melbourne, Australia many years ago. Her advice? Never eat at Chinatown. Dead fish floating in the tanks of seafood restaurants, with barely a live fish in the same tanks. Slime and mold in said tanks. Rusty surfaces used as chopping boards and mold covered wooden chopping boards. Raw meats prepared together with raw vegetables. The lady washing the dishes at the cash register was the same lady that cleaned the toilets and made the dumplings. She never washed her hands. It doesn't matter how much you pay, whether you spend $200 on your meal or $20, they are all as filthy as each other. The most expensive and well known were actually the worst offenders. Cockroaches. Cockroaches everywhere. There is no such thing as an expiry date. Sources mask everything. There is a saying here though that many people are aware of: the nastier the place, the better the dumplings taste. Best dumplings I ever ate were in a relatively poor area of Shanghai, with a barely passing health inspection grade on the wall. Full meal cost 10 yuan, less than $2 US. When my dad was a teenager, he would go to a beach half an hour away with his mates, and on the way home they would stop at a great pie place. It was well known, and dad says they served the greatest pies ever. They got shut down after it got out their pies were full of tinned dog food. My vote is that your dad is just yanking ya. I wish my wife was a Redditor. She would own this thread. Here are a couple I remember from her days as a restaurant inspector for the state health department. 1. A complaint from a grocery store that the Chinese restaurant next door was raiding their dumpster each night and taking all the produce they could find. 2. Walking into another Chinese restaurant and seeing pigeons in a cage in the back room. Just regular city pigeons. Asking, "You're not serving these to the customers, are you?" And being told, "No, those are just for us." I don't mean to disparage Chinese people by citing 2 incidents about Chinese restaurants, but the truth is that many Chinese people come to the US on a shoestring budget and cut corners as much as they can. Plus, the standards of healthy food service are often very strange to them. Telling someone that they can't cut the lettuce for the salad bar with the same knife they just used to cut a raw chicken is like telling them they have to stand on their head before cooking something. They just don't get it. They always did it this way at home. Your body gets used to fighting off the bacteria you grow up with. People from the other side of the planet have bodies that can handle bacteria we aren't used to in the Midwest part of the US. But that's a very hard point to get across. Here's one more from another side of the economic spectrum. I have a friend who plays in a band which has some national recognition. I won't say any more, but they've had a few top 10 hits. He told me once that his band was booked to play a very expensive corporate New Year's party for a very rich corporation. The party took place at a very swanky hotel in a big city. He and the band had to load in through the hotel restaurant kitchen. Unfortunately, the sewers had backed up and the entire kitchen of this swanky hotel restaurant was ankle deep in raw sewage. But there was no way the hotel manager was going to go out into the party room and explain to a host of $1,000 a plate diners that the kitchen was closed on New Year's Eve. So the kitchen staff kept cooking and the waiters kept serving. They put on rubber boots before entering the sewer kitchen to grab the next plate. The moral of the story is that food service is all about the money first. Understandable, because if there's no money, there's no food service. But you are just as likely to get food poisoning at the most expensive restaurant in town as you are at some local hole in the wall. Sometimes more so because there's more money at stake. I'm Chinese and I gotta say, health regulations are literally a joke in China, and everything is about maximizing profits. Also, people do eat pigeons. It's a dim sum dish. It's actually pretty good, but I worry about sanitation. I had it in China. 2 years ago, a colleague in my department under food safety went to inspect a Chinese in a local town. Everything was going okay as food hygiene inspections go for a better than average Chinese, until she went to inspect the space upstairs above the kitchen. Our policy is that where employees stay, if it's in the same building, that is part of the premises. When she went up, she found a large number of illegal immigrants staying there. The police were alerted and the Chinese was closed down before reopening under another name. I think registered under the owner's wife's name. Another quick new premises inspection followed and it got a hygiene rating of 4 out of 5, which for the type of premises is about as good as you'd expect, and it was left alone for 2 years. Fast forward to last week, another colleague went to inspect the premises for their biannual routine inspection. You'll never guess what the police were called for again. A Chinese LOL. A friend of mine who is a health inspector was telling me he awarded his first 0 recently. We have a 5-star rating here. The violation? The place didn't have a sink. Not even a lack of washing hands. Just straight up didn't have a sink. Received complaint about Chinese restaurant that served a lady a fully cooked mouse in her takeout container. I was pretty skeptical at first after she told me over the phone. She froze the container and brought it into our office. Somehow they did not notice that a mouse fell into the fryer while they were cooking and proceeded to box it up. Obligatory, not a health inspector, but you know how sometimes gas stations will also have chain restaurants attached? Well, I stopped at one during a road trip because I needed gas. So this was a pretty small station that had somehow managed to fit a Subway and a pizza station inside. I had decided to pay inside so I could use cash. And while I was waiting in line I smelled that fresh Subway bread and thought I might have to grab a sandwich, too. Then I looked down. There, right by my foot, was an enormous cockroach. Just doing its little cockroach things, like hanging out, then flitting away, then peeking its gross head out from under the shelf. This was in the middle of the day, broad daylight with a bunch of people around. They say if you see a cockroach out during the day, the infestation is bad. The fact that it was acting so casual around a bunch of huge humans was also super concerning. I did not get the sandwich. Not a health inspector, but I repair cooking equipment. Walk into a job at Chinese restaurant. The cook is sitting on the toilet, taking a dump, in full view of the world, whilst shelling peas. In NSW, Australia, we have this website called Name and Shame. It's official and it lists the restaurants and takeaway shops that have been issued fines and what they got in trouble for. It's pretty great. I wish every state and country would do this as well. Not a health inspector. Surprise, surprise. But there used to be a Chinese restaurant in the same area where I worked. About once a week they would leave dead fish in the alley behind the store, with flies crawling all over them. They weren't throwing the fish away, they were storing them back there until they could prep them. Not me, but I remember seeing a news outlet. Hopefully someone can find and link it. TLDR. A girl was working at this Mexican restaurant that gave complimentary chips and salsa which weren't always finished, so the owner had the workers reuse the uneaten chips and serve them to other customers. Girl tells parents who confronts the owner about it, hopefully not having to go to the media legal. Owner pretty much tells them to shove it and that it's none of their business. The girl's parents go to the media and the place is shortly shut down. There used to be a restaurant here called the Motorant, which was literally a restaurant built around an RV trailer that doubled as part of the dining room. Built around it so that every winter they could just drive away and return in spring. So, while there was quite a few ways we knew from the start the place was failing health codes, the biggest one was the 3 fat, happy, purring cats that had the run of the dining room, including cat beds and towers. Huge violation of health code, but clearly they gave no shoots. So I and 2 friends show up, order burgers, sit down, and the cats all wander into our laps and begin purring up a storm while we talked and ate. We tipped extra. If you are new to the channel, you can subscribe. I publish new videos every day. Until then, check another video. Bye for now.